Okay, welcome to another one in the Cafe Insight series that I'm doing on behalf of Cafe Culture. I am here today with Jayke Mangion, who I've known for a few years now, probably two or three, maybe a bit more actually. Jayke, I originally met Jayke through his first sort of little coffee, not little at all, coffee, Australian-driven, food-driven cafes is what I would call them, which is Brickwood. Now, Jayke now has 13 different stores of various types. Jayke is what I would term as not necessarily a pure business builder for sale. He's got very, very strong entrepreneurial core within him, so therefore seizes opportunities, but does it actually very well. He has 13 stores, 140 staff currently furloughed, isn't that correct?
Yeah, just about.
And so there are 4 Brickwoods. There's the Joe Pizza, just one of those.
Joe Public, yeah, in Clapham Common.
Joe Public, sorry, which is a pizza place.
That is, yeah.
And then WC, which is one of those, which is a bar in an old converted toilet and underground station. About to open another one of those, isn't that right?
Hoping, yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, right, about, yeah. Old Town Cavern, Powder Keg, and then a newer brand called New Ground, Nuegourund, which are cafe bars.
That's right.
There's a couple of reasons why I admire Jayke. I haven't actually been through this in advance, and it's probably embarrassing. But there are basically 3 key reasons. The Brickwood brand I talk about on a fairly regular basis because it's a very, very good example of a clever brand in terms of setting up inexpensively. So in terms of rolling out your brand, Jayke had fully grasped that if you can spend, people sometimes want to spend 200 grand or 250 grand. That really slows down your speed of moving forward. I'll not give you the figures for Jayke, but they're way below that in terms of rolling out Brickwood. But he created a very nice brand that you can roll out relatively inexpensively without the consumer feeling that they're being cheated. It's very valuable for 2 reasons. It's valuable for cash flow, valuable for rollout, very valuable when you come to sell because somebody coming in can replicate without writing lots and lots of checks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the second thing is, Jayke, and I think this is kind of an Australian thing that they kind of humiliate us for on a consistent basis. They grasp at a core hospitality, and Jayke's very, very good at that. And it's what that represents it as when you're in a Brickwood, not necessarily sitting with him, just, you know, where everybody's obviously sort of paying to attention. There's a very, very strong buzz. And obviously that's something I talk about a lot, very strong hospitality feel. Final piece, Jayke has been very clever in terms of funding. And, you know, we'll probably touch on that a little bit, but his business has been self-financed. But he's done some very clever deals in terms of taking a few distressed assets and turning around other businesses. And it's a little bit different to what most people do. I would fundamentally say it's a skill that most people don't have. Certainly wasn't the skill that I had. So there's 3 particular reasons why I'm delighted to talk to him now, but why I respect Jayke and his partners and the rest of the business as a very good example in normal times. Now we're going to have a little bit of a talk about it in these.
Yeah, of course.
So first of all, day-to-day life, what does that look like for you at the moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like most, you know, I get up, I attempt to go for a jog and end up making 1,000 phone calls, and then I pack it all in, and then of course I just watch about 9 hours of Tiger King on Netflix, you know. So
but now you've burned through all those.
You know, it's just changing so quickly. And the thing is, normally you can reach out to a number of people who you admire, respect, mentors of the past, and you can get back on that kind of track pretty quickly. Everybody's saying the same thing. It's just that big uncertainty. So I think it's trusting your gut. And what we've tried to do is just take it back to the essence of what we do. And as I was saying to you before we took this call, you know, I mean, I was running around in the van this morning and buying some veg.
Just to jump in there, sorry, for clarity, Jayke has reopened 1 store. So yeah, just to give some more context.
Yeah, it's been 2 actually. So
2, right.
Because I think like a lot of us in this industry, you know, you have a little bit of that uncertainty. So you reach out, you look, and I think there's never been so much of a funnel of free advice actually at the moment based on this situation, and that's developing into a market in its own right.
Sure.
And so I got really, you know, I think the first initial thing was about, you know, what do we do with our day? When the mind starts to evolve, starts to tick over, it was just that protective instinct that ticks out. Okay, is your family safe? You know, are your staff okay? And that was our whole journey. like most through it.
Yes,
I think,
sure.
and then, to answer your question in full, it's just now trying to ride that wave of adaptation just to see what you can do. It is genuinely survival mode. It's hard to even fathom a fundamental bottom line of a business model because it's been completely taken away from us.
Well, that's what you said. I think you said that to me in my email. It's a new business.
Yeah, it is, and that's the reality of it all now. So for me, John, it was rather than spending another hour on a webinar on how to evolve when you come back. I was like, nah, stuff this. Are we safe? I had a good 2 days of just during my hour of exercise, running around all my sites in kind of Clapham South and Balham and Clapham Common, seeing what's out there. And then we're in built up areas, and normally what it was the Gales across the road had a queue down the block, the Co-op and the Sainsbury's queues, and the butcher and the fishmonger queues. It was like, okay, well, we can do a little bit of that, but we need to do that, because we don't fundamentally make anything. We can do this. So tapped into our local veg supplier, tapped into our fishmonger, tapped into our butcher, of course, built online stores, which has been a great lesson, for us, which is something that was always back of the mind. Yeah, got to get around to that for years, honestly, but, computers aren't necessarily my best skill. So that's been good. Excuse me. So having that is something that we're going to always have for as long as we can continue to exist. And we've set that up relatively quickly. And and then it changes again because everybody's doing veg boxes now. And so, you started off really, really strong, and now that's really, really diminished. And now we've got to pick that up again. So it's about adapting and being able to offer our locals something more. And that's where brand just comes into place so much.
Yes. Sorry. So that was on online stores. Are you effectively doing that, working as a grocer model to an extent in terms of the online?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. Well, that's just one aspect of it. Bottom line is all we've tried to do, John, is, excuse me, we have tried to open up as many revenue streams as possible.
Yeah.
Simple as that. We haven't been too precious about core or concept of what we're doing. I mean, as an example, we opened our doors. Now we're lucky on Aberville Road that it's a really fantastic little community. And we were open only 6 months here before we had to close. In our Elephant and Castle location, we were only open 3 months. Now Elephant and Castle, it has 47 floors above it. So we've gone directly to those to the residents.
And that's residents above as opposed to offices.
It's London's tallest rental accommodation. Actually, it's the Uncle Building. Yeah, got a plan to go in there because the Southwark Theatre, the Playhouse, was moving in next door, but now they've run out of funding, and now they're debatable whether they'll actually ever open. So that's a big issue for the business model if they don't. But so we've just, okay, what's around us? What do they need? And we've looked at, okay, what do other people, what do they have, or what are they doing? And then when you saw that there was that stagnation, a week's wait, a fortnight's wait for mainstream, your Sainsbury's, your Ricardo's, your farm drops and stuff. So, well, maybe there's a little bit there, but I think it all comes down to sucking it up, and it's a bit of a reality check. Like I said, I mean, I haven't made a coffee in quite a while. I haven't had to run around and do deliveries, but this is genuinely it's survival, and we don't know. We're a really, really good business. We don't really have any debts. We had good, solid amount of cash flow, but a lot of that was committed to furlough. A lot of that's committed to our suppliers, and we still have some solid supplier debt. So the relationships that I've been able to build up with mutual trust and respect over 10, 15 years, they're being tested right now, in all honesty. So it's really, really hard.
I mean, it's an interesting point, that, because as you well know, it's something that, those people who dart around from supplier to supplier to supplier, and they save a penny here and they save a penny there. And we all know that sometimes for certain things, saving a penny is quite useful. But actually, it's in these situations, and there always are these situations, whether it's recession or mistakes that we make in the business, that having those strong relationships with the suppliers are vital. But, they're in the same boat is the problem. Yeah,
I mean, they're in a worse boat probably because, we're lucky. We've got a couple of grants here and there. Yeah. Some grants, because our stores were open so quickly and hadn't actually had a rateable value assigned to us yet. We've missed out there. I've got a modest business in Tooting Market. Now that's a rolling lease where we pay an overall rent where a rate is built in. So we missed out there. And
I know that location. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's actually our most vulnerable, struggling stores which are actually missing out on all of those subsidies. And of course, we had we were okay with our rents. We're absolutely petrified to go anywhere near our VAT, because what I do each week is I take my money for the rent, I take my money for the VAT, I put it in separate accounts, they're no-go accounts. And if we have to dip into those, that's just kicking the can down the road, mate. And all of these government loans, which are nice. I mean, what independent owner operator business can you add double VAT, or some additional larger loans in 12 months time? So, we want to do everything we can to avoid any kind of loans, money that's not intended for us.
Yeah.
And as far as the landlords goes, well, I mean, we're going to have to pay them back that, one way or another. So, and you can't hold anything against them. They're investors, and that's a model as well. So
I think it's a very difficult. I mean, it's like it's impossible for us to have these kinds of conversations and not discuss the rent piece, because it's such an important part of the whole model. And really, it's arguably the biggest sticking point out there. The furlough system, I think you would agree, has been great. And it was pretty quick.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
What's that?
I said yes and no to the furlough.
Why would you say that?
I actually think it's probably been too generous.
I think it has. Yeah.
Yeah, been too generous. Straight up, I've got a really, really fantastic team, really great team. But I've got some staff that come and some staff that go. Some were very, very new, so hadn't really built up a loyalty or a trust or anything like that. So, from us, everybody that's working in my cafe today, for example, they're new staff that I've had that missed out on the furlough crosshold. So their attitude is very, very different to, to a chef that I've got as an example. It's, if I was in the same boat, I can completely relate to that, John. You ask a chef to come back to work on 100% or sit on the couch on 80.
Yeah.
I know what I'd say, probably. You know what I mean? Like, this is all right. And then you've got the other stuff which are genuinely sick, genuinely self-quarantining. And then you've got some where it's a mental issue now, who are genuinely frightened of even leaving their house. And so there's that whole mental health issue, which I think there is undervalued advice and support on that, actually.
I completely
at the
agree.
moment.
I completely agree.
That's what worries me, because more, like, as an example, we paid our staff 1 week of furlough. That's all we could afford, right? And then the rest we're relying on the government just to come, and we're hoping on Monday we come and pay. And I said to every single one of my staff, because we've built just like a WhatsApp platform, which I'm updating every day and just keeping them informed. I said to them, if anybody needs some help, look, I can't promise anything, but just let me know. If you're stuck financially, just let me know.
Yes.
Not one person has asked for any money.
Right.
But right. I've lost count of the amount of calls which I've had, just people just wanting, a bit of a chat and just asking about life in general. So to me, that's massive, because this is hospitality, and I've got a lot of guys that are on, kind of minimum wage, a little bit more than that. And, they understand the boat that we're all in together, and they've been really admirable. And I really, really respect and rate them for that. But what worries me underlining that is exactly what I've just said, or, how are they doing? We're talking about a lot of, a lot of foreigners, a lot of immigrants who have only been in the country for 3 months anyway, and, just grasping, English and all of these things. So there's all of that repercussion, which is yet to come, which is
I think
worrying.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I've written about it a couple of times, and I talked about it in that sort of video the first video that I did. I think the mental health thing is huge, and I think it's because, I'm still in Ireland during the crash, and
absolutely.
The statistics, the suicides after that, and I know somebody who did, and I think so. You have an awful lot of people. You've got your business owners on one side who will have lost everything in some cases, and then you've got lots and lots of staff, or people who've lost their job, or all sorts of people who can't provide for the family. And unfortunately, the suicide thing is much more of a male thing. I'm not trying to be sexist, but it is about it's about 80%, so men can't provide for their families, so therefore they actually see the thing through. So it's an interesting one without us going down too much of a tangent than that, but I keep feeling like I want to try and do a little bit more in terms of trying to, I'm no therapist, but I've got quite a lot of experience of that world, for want of a better term. And I think there does need to be help for the industry in that. Staff and for the owners, and it's not there. But I think part of that is obviously to do with the fact that there's an enormous amount of practical help needed. The Jonathan Downeys of this world who are out there providing very practical help in terms of trying to solve this rent issue.
Absolutely, and working extremely hard. I mean, to lobby and to rally it, just to have that little bit of a shining light, or, you know, that kind of mentor online just instructing us, you know, like I've written to my local MP, you know what I mean? I'm kind of sharing the content that he's just being able to pick that up and help to contribute to the overall cause, because it will be something like that relentlessly that, you know, will eventually get recognized and help us see this through. Because I mean, who knows? I mean, in all honesty, you know, whether we make it in its full capacity, I don't know yet. It might be we come out with a handful of stores. It's going to come down to a lot of people kind of having to make a lot of sacrifices, and that's where each individual has their own agenda. They have their own needs and wants and family to look after, and it's just going to be very, very difficult.
Well, I mean, as to say, you know, I could get stuck in this, but I think one of my hopes is that we do end up with a kinder society off the back of it. You know, how long will that last?
Yeah.
No, but I think there is, I think generally at the moment, there's a lot of pulling together within this industry, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think there's a lot of kindness being shown within the communities. I think certainly also within your businesses, just so that everybody, maybe if they're not familiar with them, but yours are the ones that I know of. They're generally all, okay, they're sort of mostly all Southwest based, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I mean, that was
you've
deliberate.
got quite a lot of us, they would say, chimney pots around them, so they're part of a community.
Yeah.
And I believe, you know, the predictions that we all might make, which, as we all know, is just a finger in the air. But I firmly believe that those kind of hospitality businesses that are within communities like that will be much stronger than the ones that are beside you.
Yeah, and I mean that's a societal kind of reset in a way. You know, if we go back to our grandparents and all the rest of it, there was a time and a place where there was always, you know, a butcher and a fishmonger in every community, and that's, you know, it was always about being local, always being community, and always being able to create the true essence of cafe culture. And that's an Australian thing for me. Is like when we opened in 2013. You know, we'd do table service as a given, because that's just what you had. And you had every time we make a packet, every time an email for a local school or a local charity, you know what I mean? If it was even just, you know, 2 coffees or a slice of banana bread or something, that was always the true essence of cafe culture for us. It's always about going into places where they don't necessarily have a core of a cafe. And then that starts to resonate, evolve. Now it's, you know, I say Clapham was already established, but didn't necessarily have an independent cafe. Balham as well was, you know, a good area, but on Hilda Street, you know, where there was already a florist, a family florist for 3 generations, already a vegetable guy. You know, there was about 10 shops which I could have picked. You know, I mean, had the choice of. And now, you know, we opened, I think there was a really great Blackbird Bakery. He opened about a month after us. Milk was a cafe next door, was already established, you know. So now that's a destination. So kind of like Northcote Road was about 10 years ago before it changed. The massive premiums were sold, you know, landlords, you know, jacked up the rents, and now that's going to be a ghost town again. But it was about, you know, a couple of, and that's cafe culture, where, you know, you start with a cafe, another independent opens up, all this, and it might be a weekend where you're not necessarily going to a Brickwood, you're going to a Milk, you're going to Hildreth Street, because you're able to get your veg, have your coffee, go next door, have your brunch, and that's a good thing if that evolves and if that comes back. But it's just if we can last until then.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, that is the big question, you know. But I firmly believe, yes, that the positioning of your business is probably more advantageous than some others.
I agree.
And I mean, there's no doubt.
I think anyone with that there was already established in some capacity as a takeaway operation.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had my first business was a modern European restaurant. You know, it was a 2 rosette restaurant. I had that for 5 years before I sold it. So. You know, back to your first point about, you know, it'll be the local communities which will kind of, you know, they'll support you and stuff. But if there's a percentage which have lost their jobs, you know, that was, you know, recession kind of 2008. And I remember people didn't necessarily change their day-to-day behavior, but they did change their spending. Now, it's really easy for everybody, for the consumer to say that, you know, I want organic, I want local, I want homemade, I want free range. But there's a cost to that. You know, so if it comes down to, okay, well, you know, if that's, you know, if that loaf of bread's going to be, you know, is £4.50, but hang on, there's one that kind of looks all right for £3.50. Is that going to change? Now, it all depends on that demographic in what particular areas, but we're, you know, only 5 minutes up the road between kind of Streatham and Clapham, and you see a big difference. You see a big difference. So about being literally taking store by store and being able to adapt to the needs of the local area and being able to evolve and adapt as quick as we can. Like we had no online presence, you know, this is for the new ground model, because they were more desperate for help because they're not as established as the Brickwoods. We want to launch 1 or 2 of those next week.
And so they're cafe bar, so they're a bit more.
More of a again, it's always core about, you know, being local, but there's a sustainable element to it. We're only working with sustainable local suppliers, and then there's a big workshop offering to it. So, you know, prior to all of this, you know, once a week we'd have a life coach come in and give free coaching upstairs. We have a nutritionist that comes in once a week, and people can come in and do like 15-minute drop-ins. And then that nutritionist or that health coach can use that as a platform, as a bricks and mortar, because they're building online businesses as well. So we saw lots of synergy, and it was something that my wife and I were working on for a good couple of years before we kind of executed that. And going really, really well. Coincidentally,
I have a couple of clients doing
that. Our best week was the week before we locked down in the 6 months. So we've got these lovely bifolding doors which have never been opened and stuff like that. That's, you know, it's south facing in the afternoon. So, you know, hopefully good things to come if we can make it. But so, you know, this was all new to me as far as the online store. Maybe it actually probably been a little bit lazy, you know, in not building a full overall offering. Because it was always about the customer in store and always about that experience. That's what we do. So when that's taken away from you, as I was saying to you earlier, is like the complete fundamental of the business model no longer exists. That's a massive pill, difficult pill to swallow. How when we're yielding between 6 to 12% on a profit margin, do we make it work? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, I can show you now is like just quickly. I mean, we got our store out there. Not sure if you can see that, but you got a completely, you know, empty store here, which is, you know, it's all set up with all consumable boxes, and we've got our delivery station over there. We've got our packing station over here for our veg boxes and stuff. So it's a completely new model. So that's going to have to be looked at realistically. Now, deep down, it feels great that we're open and the community's loving us and our social media has been great and stuff. But I'm just thinking, wow, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, how do we make these numbers work? The rent is the rent. The rates are eventually going to be the rates. You know, in 12 months' time, is there going to be an increase in VAT to pay for all of these subsidies? So there's going to have to be a lot of mutual understanding from landlords to the government to everything else, because, like I said, brand new model. There's only so many strings we can evolve to, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple of points there I wanted to come in on. So you know, the first piece is, I mean, for a long period of time, if I would look in your business before all of this, I'd look in and think I was really, really good at doing that stuff. Yes, you go off in different brands, but actually you're really good at that in terms of understanding.
Yeah, they all had the same core, and it was about.
I understand that. But it's like when people sometimes come to me and they want to set up a business, and you know, they sometimes show me a projected profit and loss, and they have all of these other strands of income. And those are all to try and prop up the fact that the original, you know, the core business doesn't work. I'm always going, you know, let's strip all that out. Show me a plan where you've got, you know, you can get enough customers to the core piece, and then you build those pieces on afterwards rather than get.
Absolutely.
Now the problem is, right now, actually all of those other pieces are the pieces that are often, you know, that are supporting it. The online piece, you know. So if you look at for example, that new ground that you've got, and those other revenue pieces, and that stuff, as you say, you put 4 years of work into. So it's hardly, you know, you understand the industry and it's added on, and you understand that core piece. But you know, I think there's going to be, I'm going to use this term, it drives me crazy. There's the new normal. It's the new normal that when businesses are setting up coffee, you know, hospitality businesses of all sorts of shapes, they're having to go down that route originally of trying to look forward and look at those other strands. And I'm not sure that there's going to be a little bit of that. But it does also come back to that brand building piece. You know, the fact that, for example, Brickwood is a very strong brand that's been going for quite a long period of time. There's trust there. And therefore, go online, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, kind of, I think for us too, it was always, you know, one was, you know, that was by choice. You touched on it earlier. You know, I mean, the first Brickwood we opened cost me about 40,000 quid. You know, and you know, that was back, you know, when nobody was really using scaffold board. You could buy a 12-foot of them for like £3 a board. You know, the last Brickwood I did, I think we were paying about 20 a board. But anyway, so, and that was a little bit of the part why we wanted to try the new ground model as well, just a bit fresher, a bit cleaner, because you have to evolve, and you have to not be complacent and not be too kind of precious about, you know, what you have, because that whole Australian influence cafe model is a dime a dozen now. You know what I mean? So I was very, very conscious of that. You know, and there was about 5 or 6 staff that had worked for me for years, had gone to do their own thing and took a lot of that as core. And so for us, it was just evolving as well. And also keeping
I'm just looking at you at the same time as you speak, but I am listening.
Yeah, keeping on point with kind of, you know, with consumer trends, and also challenging ourselves to be able to create something which is going to have that longevity moving forward. But I think, you know, with the Brickwood model, it's always been very, very honest, very, very local, and very, very consistent. We've never been cutting edge. We've never been at the forefront of you know, artisan coffee movement or culture or anything. We're just local areas, giving them what they want, where we're able to execute a really, really well-made coffee within 3 to 5 minutes, and within 6 to 12 if they were. And we always had these challenges and these goals to set. If the customer's taking away, if a customer's eating in-house, and then that was the same model where we would times that time frame over the number of bums in seats by the execution that we can make between 10:30 in the morning, between 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday and Sunday, which was, as you say, that core of the model where that has to work, and if that doesn't, it's unviable.
Yes. But the new grind, which is, I mean, as I say, I'm not that familiar, but I'm looking through it now. What you've done there, which I think is a fundamental shift, and there's a lot of folk doing quite a good job at it too now, is you've pushed into, so you've created a design model that somebody's comfortable to sit in the evening as well. And
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Which would be less so in Brickwood.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I think, you know, the Brickwoods are about that, you know, that quick experience, but you know, being nestled in, having a buzz, and just doing one thing and doing it well. Whereas, you know, since that, I mean, new ground is an adaptation. You know, I mean, one, it's, you know, they're brighter, they're bigger spaces, their area. So we wanted to tap into, like I said, larger bookings, group functions, being able to use the space for, you know, a higher space, just getting more out of a venue, which is needed, because, you know, up until about 3 years ago, you know, you didn't really have restaurants trying to vie for that brunch sector. Now you do, and they've done it by mass scale, so by turnover. So they've gone the whole bottomless brunch, you know, or you can eat, and they've kind of slutted it out in a way where, you know, some people don't necessarily want to wait 30 minutes to get into a tiny little cafe that has the buzz, and, you know, some people want a table of 10, which we could never accommodate, you know, because our stores are anything between 25 to 45 seats, and I think that was always deliberate. We didn't really ever want to expand on that, because I think you lose that intimacy, and then if you need to staff a whole bunch more people on the floor, well, then the operational costs of it, which have always been going up year on year, you know, aren't as good as they need to be. So it's just adapting and evolving to the current market, and people wanting brunch later. We've noticed that as well, and people, again, off that bottomless brunch market, are now very, very comfortable to have alcohol with their breakfast and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's an interesting one. I kind of looked in on that, you know, and coming from Ireland, you know, looked in. Really, I wonder, is that how good is that for society that we've now decided that Sunday breakfast is another time to drink? You know, that's
very true.
Philosophical question, really, but
people have adapted quickly.
Oh no, I mean, I see the appeal. I see the appeal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very reluctant. I won't lie, I was very reluctant, and it was just that we were getting asked every weekend,
of course,
and we were having, you know, because we don't take bookings either. You know what I mean? It's all walk-in. So again, it's that model, which is, you know, that's a whole huge additional cost to manage bookings and you know, and a res sheet and stuff like that. So we never wanted it to be too complicated, and we wanted that whole experience to be kind of 45 minutes. Still, you get more people than not on the weekend coming to us because it's quick and it's convenient and it's consistent. And 5 out of the 10 customers that come in on weekends don't even look at the menu. You know what I mean? We go to give them their water and stuff like that, and they know what they want and that's really great for us because we've evolved into that part of their day-to-day culture. So we're getting people that are coming to us 3 times a week rather than that occasional place where it might be once a month. So that model worked. New ground, we were definitely seeing that start to evolve. We were getting people that were quickly to pigeonhole us into, we only come during the day. But then in the evenings, I only get customers that only come in the evenings as well. So I suppose in the grand scheme of things with the model, because we take a lot of obviously the ingredients which we use during the day, we adapt them. We do these really great flatbreads, which are quite popular, and being able to tick boxes as far as come in, they'll have a quick beer, they're on their home way from work, they'll grab a flatbread for the way home, or taps into that delivery market as well.
Sure, it's a very interesting point, that because obviously I have a number of clients who have let's say relatively good classic specialty coffee shops, and then you have this growth of the alcohol. You have the grinds of this world, suddenly really grasping that piece, and people, but very design led. And then people deciding, well, it's very cheap to get an alcohol license, so I'll get myself an alcohol license. And then everybody will just come in, and they'll suddenly want to have alcohol. And it almost never happens like that, because you have
and
much more, I hate to use the term, joined up,
Yeah, and the other thing too is, it's a completely, the booze element to it, John, is a completely different mentality. People that are drinking, they're staying 2.5 times as long. As our 45-minute diners and stuff like that. So in the grand scheme of things, for that bottle of we've never done a bottomless brunch or anything like that, but it was just on offer at a premium level if they wanted it. So and so they linger longer, and they don't necessarily. So if you think, okay, well, if you times that by, we could have turned that particular table of 4 over 2 or 3 times. It's kind of same, to be honest with you. So, but I think that the risk that you run is that if you succumb to a bottomless brunch, which is fundamental to what you were doing at core, I think that's going to be detrimental in the long run to that business.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one, because the other there's a very simple kind of business argument where you look at it and go, London in particular, the rents are this amount, and I'm only a normal Brickwood style, even a Brickwood style, food-driven, therefore the average spend transaction value is quite high versus maybe classic speciality or but you still have this whole chunk of the day where you're not selling anything. So everybody thinks there's a lot of truth to be said in terms of let's spread it all out in that sort of new ground way. But as long as you have to control all the operating costs while you're there, all of those variable costs. Yes, you're covering some rent during that time, but if the transaction isn't there, the margin isn't there, and the wages.
Absolutely, and the wages. Wages is our biggest thing, because we offer a table service, and we don't add a service charge. So that's all within our margins that we get, because we get very good margins on our brunch and everything, and that's one of the other things, because we're not holding yes, we've got our sausages and our bacon, but we're not holding cuts of beef or fish or those perishables. So we can, get some good margin there. But, there's the additional costs to that, with running an evening operation. And then there's, we offer cocktails here. So it's an additional skill set. And why I've never really delved into any of that with the Brickwoods is because I want baristas. And normally if you're having to kind of, if you now have a wine list or you now have a cocktail list, well, then you're taking the barista away from what they generally want to do. Or if you're learning cocktails or wine, well, then that's the time when you could have been learning good coffee, So the Brickwoods work is what they work, because the model was okay based on the rent and the demographic and the location as far as square foot. So, this new ground that we've got here and in Elephant Castle, they're a lot bigger. They're a lot bigger, so therefore all the costs affiliated that are greater, but they're also in areas where we think there's a demand for it, which is the reason for it, of course.
So let's go a little bit further into the future then. What about the Joe Public? So the Joe Public is it's a takeaway pizza place just right on the station. Are you likely to do any more of those? At one stage you were talking about maybe expanding that side of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that my business partner Andy's really kind of got his teeth stuck into. It's a model which is very adaptable, very scalable. We've still been doing Deliveroo out of those stores quite successfully, because again, that's changed again. I mean, Deliveroo is like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised I log into it tonight, I'd buy someone's rocking chair or something like that.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
you can buy everything on it now, so it's so that's not as good as it used to be, and people see that and are becoming long-winded with it. I logged on it twice last week, just a bit of a difference, and I got bored of it. There was nothing I liked, because a lot of the stores are closed, which I would have got that, because I've eaten in there, I've had that loyalty, and there's so many dark kitchens as well out there as well. Exactly. You know what I mean? So many of these bogus brands, and I mean, what are they? So. Yeah. That's changed again, but I think as far as Joe Public goes, I think that it's a really good price point. So we'll might even need to look at that as far as if people are spending a little bit less. That should be something that we should be able to bring back and adapt to fairly quickly.
Well, the big advantage of pizza is that out of nearly all takeaway food, the margin is very good, and it's it's like if you're going to have to try and squeeze a bit of margin on something, pizza's it's a better model to do it within.
Yeah, it is, and that's our smallest site. I mean, it's about 180 square foot. I mean, you can fit about 7 people inside it, and it all operates through a hatch. So that whole kind of authentic New York style pizza by the slice. And then we've got the common, which last summer we took we take advantage of that every summer, because people buy these 20 inches and they go to the common, have a bit of a pizza picnic and stuff. So hopefully that should be able to come back in its entirety, because the whole core of what it does is takeaway anyway. So once we can get back out there, that should be able to survive, you would hope.
I would have thought so. We'll put all the links to all of your brands underneath this so that people can see what we're talking about. Yeah. So you said you're opening another WC.
Well, that was So that John, that's I'm brokenhearted about that one, to be honest with you, because that's been two and a half years in the making. It's this amazing old disused loo, very very similar to the one I had in Clapham Common. But this one is in a magical place. It's at the bottom of Lamb Conduit Street in Bloomsbury, just opposite Corum's Field there. So really, really great precinct there. An old loo, like I said, that's been there well over 100 years. Got real charm to it, but it had, it's a Grade 2 listed building. It had no planning, it had no licensing. So we spent a good number of years going through all of that, and it was our first listed building as well. So it's been a lot of red tape. Yeah. I mean, it's been quite painful and quite frustrating. And we built that place, and it was a couple of weeks off opening, and it's stocked, ready to go. And hopefully, it's been all right actually, because the landlord's he's a good guy actually. He's in hospitality as well. He's got a couple of pubs. He's got a couple of pubs in the area. I mean, he's suffering as we are, so we should be okay in that one. But it's still that cash flow. It's the money that that we've self-generated, which we've put into that, and we're just like, okay, well, if that was a year and a half ago, even before we really got into the refurb, that might have been enough for us to see us through. So we're at like the completely wrong end of our investment time frame now for this to hit. So hopefully we can make it.
Yeah, a couple of other specific questions. You talked a little bit before we started to record about the supply chain and the restrictions that are there. How do you see that panning out?
That worries me. That worries me, especially if we have when Boris just dropped the close like that day, or that night or whenever it was. I mean, I don't think they'll do that, because they're realistic of like how long it takes. But I mean, you take Newground as an example, tiny, just little cafe bar, in the suburb. That still cost us a couple of grand, because when we closed, we cleaned down everything that was perishable. We took that to St. George's Hospital around the corner. We divvied that amongst the staff. We locked it down, clean, fresh, clean filmed everything, and we just parked it. It's been like an opening again. I mean, we only opened this place 6 months ago, but it was bloody, it was like an opening, and doing it with only minimal staff, because you've got to keep your costs low, good couple of grand to restock the fridges to a certain capacity, to get it deep cleaned again, and then, trying to reestablish those supply chains, and just ignorantly, I suppose, just thinking, okay, it would be straightforward, but it wasn't, because, like our veg supplier, our butcher, all those guys, being at, they're only running with 40% of their own supply chain. And then, we go to, some of them, for example, Alan Reader, they stopped their production with Braid's Farm, which is our barista milk. So we couldn't get any of the good quality milk. So therefore, ratios of our coffee were all different. That's only small, minor thing. Look, I get it in the grand scheme of things, but these are just the small steps of, it's not just about what's in our four walls. It's just that ripple effect, the majority of all of our orders, for the weekend to see us through Saturday and Sunday comes in on a Saturday morning. None of our suppliers are delivering on weekends. Cut-off times are extended, because they're reducing their own staff costs, their own delivery time. So all of that. So, and then, other things, we get our pressed juices from a company that their supply chain was in Holland. They can't get that anymore. 4 or 5 of our dishes, which had, things like samphire or watermelon, radishes and stuff, can't get any of that. So we had to adapt all of our menus again. It's just, oh Christ, so it's been hard.
I think there's going to have to be a lot of menu adaptation. I think there are layers of that we could talk about for a long time, but value, we touched on it earlier on, value is important, there's no doubt, and it is going to be important. I just kind of hope that within our sector of the market, that cafe, bar, not, fine dining will undoubtedly be hit. Maybe not in Mayfair, but, kind of nearly everywhere else. But the affordable luxury piece, I hope, will still work for us, where most of the stuff that we're doing, whether it's bars or the Brickwoods or the new grinds. But look, time will tell, but I still think people are going to have exactly what they did post 2008. They're going to want to see the perception of value. They're going to want to see, I have a very good friend who's a very, very sharp operator, trained in the Gavroche, had the post 2000. I worked with him when he first set up his first Michelin star restaurant. And, the 2008 crash happened, and I had another Michelin star client at that stage, and they just basically went out of business because they didn't adapt. And he literally overnight put out an A-frame at the front going with a £6 main course on it. Now, it was delicious. And because obviously he had the level of skill, he was able to be very margin savvy. And I don't think that shouldn't need to happen in our market. But I still think the average consumer, whether they've lost their job or lost their business or are just nervous, they're going to want to see value. There'll be a little bit of that in the menu, plus the supply, as you say.
Yeah, and that's, what I hope is that, there isn't just, because, it's supply and demand, like you said earlier, of course, in anything that we do. But, they're talking about 40%, 50%, 60% of, places not reopening. So that's, but then in the grand scheme of things, John, is like, if we can only use 30% or 40% of our premises, you can only serve so many people in a certain time anyway. And I hope there isn't, with local businesses and other businesses, there isn't a kind of a price war that breaks out, because we're going to really, really need those margins. And, back, let's say, when I had my restaurant, where after, during the recession and stuff, that was that whole, that whole Groupon culture. Remember that when that all bubbled out, and there was all, the open table. And I remember having to go early on in the week, 50% off our, just off a set menu on open table, and just having to do all you can to make those margins, work. So that would be devastating if we were needing to do kind of, any kind of pricing structure, as well as only being able to use 20% of our venues. God help us.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I do quite a lot of analysis of for some of my paying clients. I do these by Zoom, kind of recorded Zoom analysis of the menus and the merchandising, and we look at the whole reworking of the menu. And I think there's a lot of fear amongst some folk that they're going to have to drop prices. But my perspective is, and again, this is all finger in the air, is that when things open again, nobody's going to care whether you've dropped your flat white from 280 to 260 or whatever. Some of those core things, there's no point in dropping the prices of those.
No, I agree.
No,
and it's two people, two different, very, very different people. Some that are very lucky and some that are very unlucky. People that have lost their jobs, or the people that have got their jobs working from home. The working from home, they've got more money than they've ever had. A lot of mates I've got from Australia to the States working from home, they're like, I've never had so much money, because they're not actually, disposing it at a rate of knots. And so if they're able to get out, and it's that confidence in feeling safe to be able to do it, and also being very, very careful of not having the essence and the experience of what we do taken away from us. You know, it's like, if I have to reopen and there's, you know, plastic perspex screens every meter and a half, or, you know, there's a big counter in front, sorry, a big screen in front of the coffee machine, or along, you know, the pub bar. I mean, that's generally ripping out our soul, isn't it? You know,
well,
so
the hospitality piece to a large extent. It's so difficult for that to have that interaction, which is hospitality, with a mask on and a perspex screen and gloves, and, you know, I mean, you know, we all understand that the safety piece is vital, and but
absolutely,
but that is a tough one. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And it's interesting. The final question I wanted to ask you, which it kind of ties into all of that, is
yes.
And it's like, it's hard to segue into that based on that conversation. But, you know, these conversations now about if people are sitting at home at the moment, and there's a change in life, there's no doubt that there are going to be more people working at home. So let's say your businesses that were within neighborhoods where people are then working at home, some of those should be okay. But if people are baking more at home, they're learning how to cook at home, they're learning how to make better coffee and all of those things at home. You know, do you believe there's this conversation that whenever they go out to any form of hospitality, they need more of that whole experience? This whole hospitality as experience line has been kicked around for years, and I think it's true in many cases. But I think it's slightly overworked sometimes, you know. Believe that people are going to need a better experience when they come out, or more of an experience, because they know what they can do at home.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'll be very, very interesting, because on one hand, people have discovered maybe their love of cooking and all the rest of it. But I think it's safe to say that the majority of people have undoubtedly worked out that they can't cook for shit, and even the best coffee machine at home isn't as good as the coffee down your local tap. You know, so, and that goes back to the core. The soul of what we do is the essence of that experience. Even if you cook the best dish in the world at home, you still got to wash your damn dishes. You know what I mean? So again, it's taking it back to that social experience, which is hopefully, if anything, John, like, people will appreciate that even more. People will appreciate the skill set of a chef or a barista. They're not throwaway lines that we do in between, jobs, in between, you know, doing some other things. You know, there are so many guys that I've got are genuinely passionate about what they do. It is a career choice, and, you know, that would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? If we can, you know, come out of this and there is not that we're looking for it, not that we crave it, but if there was just a little bit more of a genuine respect for this industry as a true profession.
Couldn't agree more. There was a debate in my Facebook group to that very effect. You know,
you
know, the fact that actually an awful lot of people working in this industry are basically just being paid minimum wage plus a bit, and that's not your fault or any operators. That's what we pay as consumers. We don't pay enough to an extent. I kind of really hope that not, you know, with that clearly mean we're not going to go out and start spending a whole ton more, but I do hope that there's some respect for all of that. You know, it's like,
I think that appreciation. Yeah, I mean, we've noticed, like I said, we've been open a week, and you know, don't get me wrong, lovely customers anyway, but much more of an appreciation, one, that they finally got, you know, a really well-made coffee in their hand over 6 weeks, but also just a lot more engaging. And again, back to that point about people not being able to just have that local tap down the road, because it's always, you know, it's queuing for a supermarket, or, you know, so there still isn't really that. So that, again, it's all the fundamentals of cafe culture are truer than ever.
Yes.
They're truer than ever. They're more important than ever. But they're actually now completely essential. And it's only going to be the people that had that at their core, and had brand and customer service and the ability to sell, which are probably going to survive. And I think a lot of people are going to get found out, you know, as well along with it. And it's because it's going to be really, really difficult. So
completely agree. Well, that's a really good line to I've written that down. Although I've scribbled it so badly, I may not be able to read it, but the cafe culture is cooler than ever. I think that's a really good line to finish on. Really, really thank you for your time. I'm aware, you know, you're working very hard there and managing all sorts of stuff, and probably having to do that horrible look at the cash flow.
No, of course.
But we'll speak soon anyway. I look forward to sort of, maybe meeting you in one of the new ones, and you know, having a drink.
Yeah. Can I just say lastly, Jonathan? I think any people that have just unfortunately just opened a business, you know, and if I was trying to look back at when I opened my first business, and, thinking about the brand and every piece of from the coffee cup to the crockery, and being so precious and because that's the fun stuff. Let's be honest, that's the passion and that's what we've got for it. It is really going to be essential for just people to take a step back, and what was core to that particular business model now is being completely thrown out the window, and you have to be able to learn to adapt. And we're doing that now. It's like, we introduced an app, which is, it's called Hopped. And, we can go directly to locals. We can give it to our VIPs and they can order directly anything off the menu. They charge us 6% rather than delivery charging us 25%. The customer knowing that, they've been like, oh, brilliant, we'll start using that. It's integrated into our till system. And, that was something which I never would have considered at all in any way, because the app's a little bit clunky. It's been built quickly and stuff. They're getting their 6%, but it works, and we're generating revenue because of it. So you need to be completely open-minded to do everything you can to be able to survive, not necessarily make profit, but if you're able to personally invest your time and get a few quid out of it at the end of the week, that's pretty good, man. And that's a little bit of a livelihood, which you got to be able to maintain for the foreseeable future to keep the wheels on.
I think, yeah, just without dragging this out endlessly, because I know we can talk for hours, but I think the thing about that is, if it's a clunky app, so in that world, everything should be, you want to be designed up at work. But if you've built up the loyalty, whatever brand that anybody has, people will want to support that. It isn't an anti-delivery thing or any of those things, but people will fundamentally want to support that.
And that's just our barista. That's just our barista saying, hey, if you download this, because it's an exclusive thing too as well. It's like, it was just for locals. We're just doing this, for you guys or selected. So there was a premiumness and the VIP element to it, which people appreciated. And then the hook was, and if you order through that, we're actually getting 20% more than we normally would have, because Deliveroo is a nice little bolt-on, as we all know. It's nice if it can, contribute 8 or 10% over the course of the month, with their market. But it's not a model built on 100% of sales. No. And so that's the thing. You're just working for the man. If that's Deliveroo, well, unless you're a dark kitchen sales. So so you need to be able to create all of these revenue streams that these pennies across the board equal pounds at the end of it once collated. So it's hard, but at least it's positive. It's better than sitting at home watching webinars on how to do it, to be honest. So.
I completely agree. Well, look, thank you very much for your time. I will hopefully see you very soon.
Absolutely.
Look after yourself.
No problem.